Well, thank you for staying with us on the AM show. We're back after sports and we're talking about our boundaries in Ghana. And basically since that 2017 ITLOS ruling in our favor, there's been a lot of work on our boundaries, the pillars that mark Ghana's boundaries. There are some concerns. I have seen in recent times Major General Emmanuel Kotia going around pretty active. Our own colleague here, Maxwell Agbagba, going around with him. But this morning, we host the Ghana Boundary Commission as they get into the latest insights, the work that the Commission has been doing, and what the way forward is, even as today we mark a rather special day. Our guest joining us for this conversation, we have Sarah Ekuban. She is Director of Policy, Plans and Programs at the Ghana Boundary Commission. We also have Reverend Herbert Jabba, Director, Boundary Survey and Delimitation, Ghana Boundary Commission. Rev and Sarah, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
It's good to have you here. You know, this morning I almost felt a bit nostalgic because Major General Kotia is a lecturer of mine, and I was just imagining if he had come, what it would be like. I would do my job and, you know, pin him here. You get it. And when we go to class, he will pin me. He would have definitely pinned me there. But it's good to have you join the conversation. The Ghana Boundary Commission has been up to quite a lot in the last few years. I'd just like to set the tone for the conversation, starting from some of what you've been up to, especially in the last 2 years. I'll start with you, Sarah.
Okay. All right. Good morning. Thank you. Good morning to your listeners. So the Ghana Boundary Commission, as you said, we relatively new. We came into force fully in 2021, even though we're established by an Act of Parliament in 2010. In 2020, that's when we had our national coordinator appointed, but we became fully operational in 2021. And since then, 2-3 years, we've done quite a lot, as you said. What our mandate is to ensure that our boundaries, international boundaries, that's land and maritime, are secured. So that's what we've been doing in the years that we've been in existence, ensuring that our boundaries are properly demarcated or delimited. And it's also good for us to be here today because even as we are talking about boundaries, today, 7th June, marks the African Border Day by African Union member states. So thought it was good today to come here, talk about the commission and also about the day. Yeah.
Let me come to you, Rev. So 2 years running, 2 years of work. We know what established or what caused the establishment of the Ghana Boundary Commission, but please expand a little on that and also tell us a bit more about what you've been up to over this period.
Okay, so thank you very much and good morning to your listeners. The Ghana Boundary Commission is doing a lot of work on our maritime and land boundaries. We have tackled the eastern part of our boundary, the northern and the western part. With Togo, a popular dollar power area, we had to get some issues resolved on our boundary pillars that have been removed and some encroachment along the place. The northern part, Sapliga area, we went there to secure the boundary, the pillars. Most of the issues are with the pillars. People try to remove the pillars and we make sure...
People try to remove the pillars? When you say people, Ghanaians, people from the other side, depending on which border?
We've not caught anybody doing so you cannot say per se who exactly is, but it's alleged. Sometimes it's alleged the other side do it, sometimes alleged some people on our side. But people remove the pillars and we try to find the pillars and repost them in conjunction with our neighbors. All work we have to do on the boundaries, we sometimes go and do reconnaissance and search, but definitely if we have to re-put the pillars back, we do it together with the neighboring countries. So in the eastern side also, we've done some work. Maritime, yes, a lot of negotiations are going on. We recently had an inspection on the ITLOS ruling. We went to do some inspection on the maritime. So we've been working, even though we have had a few years operating.
How exactly do we go about monitoring in terms of, for example, in other jurisdictions, their marine enterprise would be monitored constantly? Partly, for some of them, it's because there are a lot of people who are always trying to cross Italy, for example, the Lampedusa area. For us, how do we do this monitoring? And do we have any inkling why, for example, some people are trying to remove these pillars? And do we know why? What is it that they stand to gain?
Okay. So we are working in collaboration with a lot of agencies, the Ghana Immigration Service, the Navy, the Air Force, all of them are partners who work with us to collect information and monitor the boundaries, both maritime and land. So the urge to sometimes people trying to remove the pillars may necessarily be due to some don't even know where they are there. They are farming, they are using their tractors.
Oh, I see.
And they just bulldoze it.
It's an impediment.
It's an impediment.
So they're getting them off.
Getting them off. Some of them are maybe scrupulous. They are mining and doing some bad things, and then they want to move the pillar so that it looks as if they are working in the neighboring country or something. So that may be some of the reasons, but we've not prosecuted somebody to tell us exactly why he's doing one thing or the other. But we are collaborating with all the agencies to be able to do this work effectively, because it's not a one sector work to be done. So
which entities do you collaborate with on this enterprise?
So like I said, the Air Force,
okay.
we work with the Navy, we work with the Ghana Immigration Service, the police themselves, the customs officials,
NIP, National Intelligence Bureau, Ghana Geological Survey, quite a number of them, depending on what the issue. I mean, also you asked about how we do the monitoring. We have a technical team that goes to the field. So what we have to do is go to the field and assess the state of the boundary pillars, or the markers as we call them, to make sure that they're there. Because as you're well aware, one of what defines a state, a character, is a well-defined boundary or border. So we have to make sure in ensuring the territorial sovereignty of Ghana that what demarcates or what defines our borders are in place. So we regularly go out in the field across all our neighboring countries to find out the state of the pillars. As Herbert rightly said, some of them are displaced by natural occurrences.
Right.
You go to the field and find them submerged or covered with sand. Some too are displaced, by human actions and what have you. So we have to make sure they are there. And if they are not, then our job, next phase, comes to putting in place these pillars. But as my colleague rightly pointed out, we do this in collaboration with the neighboring states. So if you're on the eastern boundary, for instance, we can't just go and assess it by ourselves. We do it with our counterparts from Togo.
To ensure that no one is pushing into the other's jurisdiction. And I want to believe that there are satellite, ways of doing the monitoring as well. But how often do you do this monitoring, for example? Let's say in a month, let's say in a quarter. How often do you do this to ensure that the pushing and shoving is not really happening? Because for all you know, maybe on one end, there could be a lot of activity there, and by the time you do, there's a lot of work to be done. How do you do that?
Okay, so how often we do that? We just got back from the field last month, and covering about approximately 60 kilometers of the boundary. In total, we have over 2,200 kilometers boundary line. So
that's a lot of space.
That's a lot. So we are taking it.
I don't envy you on that front.
So we try to do it as often as we can. So what we do, we covered 60 kilometers. Last year too, we covered quite a distance. So we do that every month. The impediment, of course, would be the rainy season, because most of these boundary areas are also inaccessible and prone to flooding. So when the rains come, we can't do, but we take opportunity when we're in the dry season or when we can to do a lot of the field work. Yes.
And speaking of getting submerged, we know some of those concerning the 2017 ITLOS ruling have also been submerged in a way. And I'm sure that will impede your work from time to time. But you're looking at reconstructing some of these. What exactly is the plan? Have you started on this already? Because this is crucial. It was on the back of this that we won that ITLOS ruling. We all celebrated it, but now if they are getting submerged, so what's the state of that?
Okay, so we have a reaffirmation program going on with all our neighbors. Okay. And the reaffirmation is we go back to our pillars that define our boundaries and make sure they are there. If they are not there, we find modalities and plans to re-put them there. So like she rightly said, we've done 60 kilometers with our neighboring Togo, and we have plans to do same with Burkina Faso and also with Cote d'Ivoire. So those plans are there. The major pillars, the main pillars that start the maritime space, the Pillar 1 and the Pillar 55 on our borders are going to be monuments that will help to be there permanently to help define the maritime space. So the maritime border is defined by just a line, but it starts from a pillar, and that is what we will define on land, and that will be a monument to do. So rest assured, we are preempting any litigations or anything on boundary. So whilst there's peace, we work on the boundaries and make sure they are secure, they are well defined, so that anything that comes up in future becomes easy to resolve, other than just waiting and sitting down. So like you asked, we are doing this via satellite imagery. We have drones that we use on the field to help some of the monitoring, and we also map also with drones. So we do surveillance and checking of the line with drones, and also then we do mapping also of the lines with drones, so to help secure the boundary.
How problematic is it? Shortly, I'll ask about other areas, but how problematic is it when the boundary pillars get submerged? How difficult is it for you to ensure that the demarcations are properly kept and all of that, like with those I'm making mention of now? How difficult is it? Okay,
so boundary pillars, we have documents, we call legacy document, that reference the information of where these pillars are. The challenge will be when you're on the ground, you cannot easily find a pillar in the forest. So it takes some collaboration with a lot of people. So we find the pillars. If they are not there where they are supposed to be, then the two parties agree on where to place it based on the definitions in the legacy document. So the legacy documents, or the documents that we inherited from our colonial masters, becomes the defining document between us and them, where the boundary line is. And by and large, the boundary itself definition is on land. There have not been much dispute. It is when you go and don't find the pillars, or somebody encroaching, then we go there and redefine and put it back where it's supposed to be. So it's quite interesting.
Beyond land, of course, there's maritime.
Yes.
There's our airspace. I don't know about what you do there since you collaborate with the Air Force, the Navy, and all of that. I'll come to you, Sarah. Beyond the land borders and the demarcations, in terms of our territorial waters and all of that, how do we do the monitoring? How do we go about it?
Okay, so we do that also together with the Ghana Navy. And just recently we did in relation to after the ITLOS ruling, both countries having gone to observe the line or the space, we did a monitoring observation mission with the Ghana Navy, and that showed that there hasn't been any infractions or anything along that space. So that's what we do, and we are also going to look into do that this year with Togo, and also with counterparts from Cote d'Ivoire. The other one we did it with the Ghana Navy, but we are doing it with Cote d'Ivoire to make sure that everything is as should be, and then everyone is respecting the ITLOS ruling and implementation of it. So we do that with the vessels, the Navy vessels, and the drones, the maritime drones that we have with high quality cameras that we got, yes, from...
I also posed that question because it was just yesterday evening or so that I was reading a story. I've forgotten whether it was the Telegraph. I should have actually copied it, talking about our territorial waters in Ghana and how Chinese fishing trawlers and others are basically taking the food out of the mouths of our fisher folk. You get it? They are fishing in our waters. We're not really getting them, holding them to task and all of that. So I posed that question on the back of that as well. What's our approach to that? How are we dealing with it? Rev?
Okay, so I think the Ghana Maritime Authority is on top of it already. They are handling a lot of issues on that as well. We don't have we look at the boundary, but so the Ghana Maritime Authority are looking into it and are working on that area directly. But to do with the border, our task is to make sure that we police the border and make sure it's working. And like she said, we are up to it, sir.
In terms of the relevance of this commission, 2 years of life and everything that has been done, your collaborations, the major stakeholders, what would you say, and I know it's a tricky question, but I'm sure someone would be watching and saying, whoa, Ghana Boundary Commission, maybe I've not heard too much about them.
Yeah.
How relevant has your work been to our national life? You started mentioning how a state, even to be called a state, needs to be properly demarcated.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Okay. So that's a good question, because we also hear that a lot. People haven't heard about the Boundary Commission. They see you and it's like, oh, where are you from and when did it come into play? And I think the relevance of the Ghana Boundary Commission coming into play is very key, because we need to know where our boundaries are, and not just that, but you can't know, I mean, if you don't know where your boundaries are, if they are not defined, you can't then get people to go, whether security forces or the immigration or whatever. You cannot put a border post there, for instance, if you don't know where it is. So in our 2 years of existence, we've identified quite a number, as you said, of these pillars that are not in place, but also in instances where if the pillar is not there, you can't tell. The citizens, even though we are one people, can't tell whether you're in Togo territory, for instance, or you're in Ghana territory. And then, of course, there may be some disputes here and there. And we've gone on the ground while we are doing our work. We've helped in some cases to resolve some of these disputes over where the boundaries are. So a space, I think, where was it? Sapeliga. Where Pumakum, where we thought it was in our...
Which region is that in?
It's in the...
Northern region.
Northern region.
Upper East region. So Pumakum, there was a river defining the boundary between us and them, and the farmers...
Is it Burkina?
Okay.
Burkina Faso?
No, Togo.
Togo, right?
Yes.
On the Togo, okay.
Yeah. So they're part of the community trying to work beyond the river, saying it's theirs, and our team says the river is the boundary. So we went to resolve that. There's also Kametono area also, where the part of the community spreads beyond the boundary to Togo side. So there are issues of people living on the boundary who have issues crossing and go. We help resolve those things when we get on land. Dispute resolution in that vein.
And also to add to that, I think also one of the things that we do is to identify deprived border communities. So in our work, while we are finding out these pillars, we identify deprived border communities and come into play with interventions, human security interventions. So rehabilitation of schools and pillars, schools and clinics, what have you. So I think it's quite relevant, because otherwise we wouldn't, if we hadn't done some of these work, some of the things that we have found out would not have been known. But now we are bringing it to the fore, and we are making sure that our boundaries are marked, clearly marked, and also kept safe from that, in that regard, yes.
So even beyond the demarcations of our borders on different fronts, you're also playing the extra role of letting those in power, government institutions, know when there are deprived communities as well.
Yes.
How many of these, I mean, maybe not give me a full number, but as you go along, how many of these do you encounter, and what then follows? I'm sure there's health infrastructure, there's educational infrastructure to talk about. We know about the schools under the trees. In fact, we have a documentary series that we've been highlighting, our schools of shame and all of that, just to ensure that we make some progress. So just walk us through that. Maybe Rev can come in at this point. So what are some of these that you encounter?
Most of the communities, like you said, are in village, rural areas. Most of them are inaccessible. So sometimes roads, even accessible roads, are key.
Wow.
That play. And the roads are not serve only the community, but even patrolling the border communities. So there's a commission to make some roads in the Sapeliga area along the border to help patrolling and to have access into the community. There's also another one near the Dollar Power area that also help to
that name whenever I hear Dollar Power
to have access to that community. Schools, we have done a lot of research. Our research department has done a lot of work gathering those information. We are working with our partners. Here, some are in the pipeline trying to get some of the schools rehabilitated, the hospitals. Almost all the communities along the boundaries are deprived, because sometimes they are very far away from settlements. They are very far away from settlements. They don't have schools, they don't have water. And so most of the communities are not touched with the development. So then we note them, and we start working with the partners to work to.
You'd also like to come in. Even as you
Yes.
do, I'd also like to add, do you find some places that are not connected to the national electricity grid?
Yeah.
I know that a lot of these rural, I'm just asking on that front as well.
Yes, a lot of them. A lot of them. Majority of them are not. A few of them who are close to major towns are connected to the national electricity. Sometimes it crosses over to the other side, unfortunately.
When you say it crosses over to the other side?
Sometimes some
borders?
Yes, sometimes some communities are Ghanaian communities that have crossed over, have grown and spilled over to the other side. So
wow.
everything, yeah. So we have communities that's sitting right on the border, half of the city is in half of the community is in Ghana, half of it is in Togo.
How do you deal with such situations?
They are Ghanaians, sometimes they are Togos. You see, the border communities are the same people. They are one family, and the borderline came through. So it is my land, and the border came through. So it's my community. So recent work, there are towns along the Togo border community. The same people, the borderline goes through. So they're taking power from Ghana. Majority of them are in Ghana, so they just work like that.
That's an interesting scenario. You were about to comment on.
Yes, so I just wanted to also touch on the infrastructure and also deprive communities of access to these border areas. For instance, in 2021, when we went to the Dollar Power Sapelic area, as Herbert mentioned earlier, most of these places are not accessible. So getting there is even an issue, and that's where the collaboration...
I was wondering, I was thinking, if they are as inaccessible as Rev is saying, how do you get there?
So yes, thankfully with the help of the Ghana, support from the Ghana Army, specifically the Ghana Armed Force, specifically the Air Force, most of these places when they're going to the field, it's the Air Force, the helis or the planes that they use, because we cannot go there by road. So that's what that support comes in, to be able to assess it. And we did a multi-agency assessment to Dollar Power and also to Sapeliga in 2021. And one of the findings we had, as of course, in our report, and our report goes out even to the presidency and to all the stakeholders that are affected, we realized there has to be roads, for instance, to these areas. And I'm happy to say we facilitated the process, and we had the Ministry of Roads and Highways giving, I think, about 78 billion to construct feeder roads to Dollar Power and also to Sapeliga. So that is in the process. The 48 engineers, I think, will be handling that because of security reasons. But also with the schools, as we speak, we went to, I think, Lekele Bikame and a number of communities where we identified projects that needed, like clinics and schools and all that. And we put the report together. Now we have ECOWAS coming in to help support rehabilitate a clinic in the Lekele Bikame area, in the Volta region. So the team is actually there this week to do an assessment, and then it will begin soon. So these are some of the things that come out. We try to produce results. It's not just going to look at the pillars, but bring some kind of development into those areas.
Let me just say, lest I forget, more power to your elbow. It appears you have quite a load on your shoulder, so more power to your elbow. But you've kept mentioning stakeholders. Yes. Beyond those that you've mentioned so far, beyond those agencies, the NIB, the Ghana Army, the Navy, among others that you would be collaborating with, what are the other stakeholders that on a daily basis often you're working with to ensure that your work is seamless, smooth?
Okay, so we have a number of stakeholders at the national level, regional, continental. So aside the ones that we've mentioned, we're also working a lot with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of National Security, and also the Forestry Commission. Of course, we sit under the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, so there's a lot of collaboration on that aspect. At the regional level, we have the boundary commissions from the neighboring countries, of course, from Togo, Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, also with Nigeria, because we share maritime boundaries with Nigeria as well. So we collaborate with them. And on the continental level, we have the African Union, ECOWAS. So we are part of the African Union border program that seeks to ensure that we are turning our borders into bridges, stop barriers. So we are working with that, to collaborating a lot with them on a daily. Also with GNPC, I forgot to mention that we work a lot with them, especially on the maritime front. So quite a number of them.
I know they are definitely embedded in that. But in terms of, even before we get into other aspects, I'd like to look at the crucial problematic areas. I know whenever institutions come here, I know there are issues that can be resolved, and this is a platform that can allow you to give vent to some of them, and hopefully you see. I know it's not a bed of roses. So Rev, I'm coming to you on this. What are the crucial problematic areas for the Ghana Boundary Commission? Where can you do more if you were given more, if this were done? I don't want to mention them, but I'm sure you'd be talking about funding, human resource, logistics. You see, I know where they usually
usual suspects.
Usual suspects. So let's get into some of them.
I don't want to mention numbers on budget, but the budgeting we require to do this work, you can just imagine getting a team to the field and staying in the field for 3 weeks, 1 month, and so on. To do this work, finding the players, surveying, flying the drone, all those things.
And even the human factor. I mean, if these are such remote communities, even basics like water you will drink and all of that has to be.
So the team going has to be resourced very well. And thanks to the national coordinator, he's pulling up all resources from all places to be sure. Because the support, the funding we're getting generally from the nation is not adequate.
So what does your budget look like?
I'm not in the account section. So approved budget was like 3 million.
Ghana cedis.
Ghana cedis.
Okay.
Our requested budget was like 56 million because of the boundary. We have 2,200 kilometers of boundary, and our plan was to do at least like 700 a year. It's not possible.
She was just mentioning you were doing about 60 kilometers, within the past period.
Yes.
So you need funding.
We need funding.
Because 3 and 56, that's a shortfall of 53.
Yeah. So it's the funding and the equipment we use, precise equipment. These drones we use, they are precision equipment. It's not just normal drone you fly, but a precision equipment, a surveying, mapping drone. So the sensors and things are quite expensive.
And I'm sure these are not just the ordinary drones we fly.
No. So GMPC bought us one, two of them, a few of them, and we're using them. GIZ sponsors some of the GNSS equipment we are using. And other stakeholders are helping. But funding is the major need we have. So we call on the government to either push us up more and other stakeholders to support us, get the tools and equipment for us.
Which other stakeholders can come on board? I mean, you've mentioned some of them, the GIZ among others, with facilitating your work with drone technology and all, but how do you reach out? Because obviously there's a shortfall. From what I see, it doesn't look like the shortfall will be dealt with in the immediate term. So you must look at other means. How are you going about that? That is, if you have any information on that.
Well, I mean, we're just appealing to stakeholders and approaching a number of different development partners to see where we can collaborate or leverage on their expertise or resources. I mean, it's about coming together to do something with the little that we have. So I may have a little, they may have a little, we put it together, at least that can get us somewhere. So we've been doing, the past couple of months, we've been engaging a number of the development partners. We've visited, approached them to see where they can support. And one of the areas we also need support is capacity building. As I mentioned, we are a relatively new commission, so we have to get the staff also up to speed in these areas and build their capacity. We also, we also approaching, for instance, the World Food Program. Their focus is on the deprived border communities, or going into these communities, like school feeding programs or supporting them. So we just approach based on their mutual areas of interest where we can come together and put something up. That's what we are casting our nets wide to see where we can catch some big fish.
And to the big fish out there who are watching us this morning, yes, we're talking to you. Please help our Ghana Boundary Commission so we can actually maintain our boundaries and get the country still running. But so we've been talking about our boundaries by and large. I just want us to accelerate the conversation and talk about it on an African continental level. Up until, this conversation was coming up, I didn't know there was anything called African Border Day.
Okay.
And now I do. So thanks to you guys. But what is that all about, the African Union Border Day? What is it all about? I'll start with you, sir.
Okay. So as I mentioned in my earlier submission, the African Border Day is commemorated or was constituted by the African Union back in 2010, March 2010. To highlight the issues about borders and boundaries and the importance in ensuring security, development, and also cooperation among states. So that came to being in 2010, as I mentioned, and it's 7th of June every year. So the idea is for the countries to come together to collaborate and see how we can ensure that our boundaries are demarcated, defined clearly, and also, as we say, how can we come together in terms of neighboring states to push the agenda, to highlight the role of the importance of these boundaries. And also the African Union Border Program seeks to do the same thing. So the Border Day, we use that to highlight the importance of the the African Union Border Program and the Niamey Convention, the African Union Convention on Cross-Border Cooperation, which is also key in our work as far as cross-border cooperation is concerned. So they're different, but it's all about borders and boundaries and what everyone can do to ensure that they're safeguarded.
Right.
If I just want to put it in layman's terms, two neighbors have a border between them, and they take a day, or they put a day aside for them to recognize that we have a border and we know where the border is and we don't have issues with it and we live in harmony. Like she rightly said, the borders must not become bridges, but it must not become barriers, but rather bridges through which we can communicate and work in peace.
And that's an important point to make, because even on the continent, we see so many of these, sometimes even spilling over into very discomforting situations. So it is a good thing. But even as I was reflecting on this, I also reflected on the balkanization of Africa. Right from the start, that consensus and colonialism and everything. Would that we didn't even have these borders and it was a seamless Africa. But we're not there yet. We are definitely not there yet. So for now, we'll protect what is ours.
So the African Border Day is driving the issue of us not recognizing that even though there are borders, we are one people. Yeah. We are one people. With all our neighboring countries, like I'm saying, the boundary line passes through the same people. It's one family whose land or whose people have been cut into two and part live here. If you go to the Volta region, the chiefs in the Volta region, their people are living on the other side. Yeah. There are some also who live on this side, or they go and come and do the festival. So we are one people. So the borders do not separate us, but they tell us that we are neighbors and we know where our the national jurisdiction ends.
If you go to places like Ethiopia, Nigeria, and the rest, then you see how these borders really have carved out and forced people into certain areas where ordinarily they would have just been spread across. And even thinking more beyond this, I'm now reaching towards the AFTA conversation, the free trade area. Yeah. Would that we could trade more? Because the trade on the continent is just a pittance compared to the capacity, what we could actually trade. If you look at the statistics, they are nothing to write home about. But let's come home to boundaries. So Sarah, what is the theme for this year's Boundary Day?
Okay, the Border Day. The theme is the
Border Day, I beg your pardon.
Acceleration of the AFTA implementation. I mean, that's the African Union theme. That's what they're looking at for the year, and this year marks 60 years. So they're just trying to see again how to create a seamless Africa, making us one people, trade is one. But where we come in, tying it into us, we are seeing the role of the Ghana Boundary Commission. If you're talking about free trade within the continent, within the region, one of the things we have to make sure that our boundaries are also okay. There's cross-border cooperation, effective and good cross-border cooperation between us. So how do we come into play to ensure that these are there? And these are elements, once we look at, that would help to also accelerate the implementation of the AFTA.
And what can we expect on the back of this year's theme? What are we hoping to take away? What are we hoping to do in the course of this year, for example, on the back of that theme?
Okay, so part of the day celebration is the briefing being done in Parliament to the parliamentarians. We have done yesterday we were at the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Information, to give a speech and tell us what we have been doing so far. Besides that, I think by and large we are looking at making sure that we are relevant in the African continent and we are not sitting back and letting disputes arise when there are issues on the border. Anytime resources emerge anywhere, that is when you see the issues. But if the border is clearly defined, we are safe. So between us and our neighboring countries, we are on top of our communication, and everything is there to keep us going.
I think in getting our work across, we realized, I mean, last year we had the Border Day commemoration with Cote d'Ivoire. We did joint trip.
So it was a joint affair.
It was a joint affair, joint commemoration. And also because it's in the period of the Green Ghana initiative, we did some joint tree planting along the boundaries to reaffirm our boundaries and all those things. So it was huge. But this year we realized that we need more people on board, not just in terms of support or funding, but when we go out into the field, like we need the people there to tell us where the pillars are. Herbert is a field person, so when they go to the field, they don't know where the pillars are. Sometimes it's in someone's farmlands, and you need them to walk you there to show you. So we realized that this year we just want to take a step back and tell people about the commission, the Ghana Boundary Commission, that we exist and that we need the support. So that's what we are doing, more of a media engagement this year. So yesterday, the press briefing, today the minister, our sector minister for Lands and Natural Resources is delivering a statement in Parliament this morning. And we are also here. It's just to get the word across, because we realize that we need to expand our reach to get people to know us, so that when we come into the field, we get the collaboration and support that we need from every single person, not just the agencies, but to the citizen, to the person living at the residence. We need everyone's help. So it's just to get the word out there.
Just a little to add that the collaboration of the communities is key. Very, very
Of the
communities.
I was just about to get to that. You know, we have see something, say something.
Yes.
On the borders as well, I'm sure. I mean, even if someone were touching a pillar or doing something inimical to the borderlines or our interest as a country, you would expect someone to want to speak up on that, right?
Yes, very much. So the collaboration with we thank the communities we have been to, the Petoi community we're just coming from. We thank them so much for the support they gave us. And with the unfortunate incidents also, there are traps. People set traps on their farm and you're looking for pillars, for example. So
oh, wow.
you can have an accident thereof. We nearly had a near miss in such things like that. So we thank the communities for hearing us. A lot of them hear that and they remove the traps from the way from us. A lot of them, we go to them and they say, oh, well, our father told us about the pillars here or there, and they walk us to the place. It is quite a lot of work to have the collaboration of the communities. So they should once your land or your community is close to the boundary, we'll definitely come there, and so they should be expecting us, and we'll be working with them on that level.
And I'm sure a lot of these are farming communities and the rest, so
definitely.
this is crucial.
Yes.
In fact, I had my heart in my mouth when you spoke about that near miss there. So the sensitization drive is also
It's very, very key.
It's pivotal.
Yeah.
Are you doing that yourself? Are there state agencies helping you with that, like the NCC? I mean, how do you go about it?
So before every field trip, we have a sensitization. We call the communities and the chiefs on both sides, and we have a sensitization to this. And she leads the sensitization, and it's very, very elaborate. But whilst we're doing the work also, we have a team who goes ahead of us to the communities and try to tell them that they are coming now and they are doing that, give them their support and everything. So
They need more than the 3 million. They need a lot more.
in fact, one trip, if my accounts would say one trip costs not less than 200,000, just a trip for 2 or 3 days would cost not less than 200,000. So you can just imagine we staying there for 3 weeks, how much money it costs. And they give us 3 million sometimes if you rent alone. I'm not talking for the accounts people, but we need it. We need a lot more of funding to be able to do the work we are supposed to do and complete it.
So it's an appeal as well. I am standing in the gap for them. I know they would probably not want to put themselves out there, but I'm saying it. The donor agencies, partner agencies, if you can, you're hearing them. I know you watch us. How about you come to their aid so that they can actually execute their work? But let's talk about how we're commemorating this day. As far as Ghana is concerned, African Border Day. How are we commemorating it? This year, are we doing it by ourselves? We're not collaborating with Togo this time?
No, not this time. We're doing it by ourselves this time. As I said, we want to get the message out there about our existence, and also the fact that we need the support of every single person to come to our aid. We just recently came from a mission with the Togo people. We had wanted to do with them, but we just figured let's all deal with our internal issues, get the word out there, and then combine forces. So basically this year is just a media engagement to get the word.
Do you have any members of your team who speak the other languages? I mean, all you need is some French.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
We have professional interpreters and translators in the team, and we have some of the team members who are fluent in languages, the French, the local languages and things. So it's really helpful when you do that. We work with them.
You definitely need that. To cap off the conversation, before I take your final words, I'm sure there are some who are watching us who would be saying, wow, I want to know a lot more about their work. Some people may even be aspiring to do what you do. How can people get to know more about the Ghana Boundary Commission, the work you do, the sort of assistance you need, how crucial you are to our national life?
Okay.
I'd like each of you to take a bite of that.
Okay.
So I'll start with you.
All right, sure. So we have our website. It's www.ghanaboundarycommission.org. So we can reach us on our website. We also have our social media pages on Facebook, Instagram. Ghana Boundary Commission or at GHBC Official. But we can also, our office is at Kanda, and we can just reach out to us, whichever way, social media, websites, come to our offices. And also we appeal to the residents, again, on the basis, on the back of the see something, say something. We get calls also from the municipals or district. They see something or there's an issue related to the boundary. They reach out to us, and then we come in to intervene with the relevant stakeholders.
Yeah, so the media platform is the key place you can find us. The Facebook is the link. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, all the pages. So if you want to have any information about us, you can come there. Or walk into our office anytime and ask of the commission or any question, and we'll be. So
where specifically in Kanda?
Kanda Post Office. Yes.
The post office.
We're in a building close to the post office. So when the post office is the easy way to find us.
That's on the Mango and Wheat stretch.
Yes.
Then you get to the post office. Yes. All right. So if you didn't know, now you know. Any final words?
Well, we just want to thank our listeners. Thank you for your time, but also to the people that have listened today, to spread the word out there about the Ghana Boundary Commission and the work that we have been doing, and the fact that we need each and everyone to come on board to support us in our mandates. It's, as you rightly said, it's quite huge, but to cover over 2,000 land boundary, and not to talk of the maritime space, we need everyone's support to do that.
Yeah. It takes all of us, right?
So without the definition of a boundary, there's no country. So the country's pillars belongs to all of us. So nobody should just see the pillars and just think it is a nuisance or something. You should take care of it. If a boundary pillar is in your farm or anything, know that it's part of a national asset that it helps to define the boundary and not just play with it. So everybody is responsible to be part of this boundary of our nation. And thank them all for supporting us when we come to the field.
In fact, this is a national security matter, the work they do. Our very national security hinges on the work they do. We salute you for protecting us, so to speak, and ensuring that we can enjoy our Ghana.
Thank you very
much. It's our pleasure.
Those who joined us for this conversation, Sarah Kuban is Director of Policy, Plans and Programs at the Ghana Boundary Commission. We also had, joining the conversation, Reverend Herbert Jabba, Director, Boundary Survey and Delimitation, Ghana Boundary Commission. Both of them joined us on the show for a conversation. Up next, we have quite a lot lined up. We'll be taking you to the NSMQ regional qualifiers. Yesterday, quite some action, and there's more coming your way later today. We'll also be telling you about the Hits FM Rep Your Jersey much later in the show, as the Citizens clash with Inter Milan. Which team will come up tops? As we gear up, we'll be engaging one of our sponsors on that event, Shalina Health, producers of Shaltox lozenges and Leopard Balm. Would also bring you AM Business, courtesy of EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank. And today, James Ashen reports that some investors within Ghana's automotive industry want government to explore various options in addressing the high taxes causing distress within that space. That conversation is up next after the break.